Welcome everyone. This is Mary here and Nicole Quaid at the Iowa Mentoring Partnership. I have all of you muted right now, but if you want to mute on your end, then when I unmute, you'll be able to join if you want to make some comments. Really appreciate you joining us today, and thank you for putting up with technical difficulties. We are back to GoToTraining, which is actually a webinar system, and I'm saying forget the other thing I was told to use. So hopefully today will run more smoothly now that we've all found each other in the same GoToTraining line. So thanks again for joining us. So we're going to talk about the National Quality Mentoring System today, and you made time out of your day today. I appreciate that, to be on this call. So if you would use the chat box right now, I want you to think about what was of interest to you about NQMS, why you made the time to join us now, and what are you hoping to learn about NQMS or hoping to hear about today. So if you take a minute in the chat box to just add a comment what you'd like to hear today. So thanks. We have a couple of comments, and would welcome more comments. Like what interested you about joining the call today to learn about NQMS? What particularly? Lynn said growth mindset, and I think that would mean that you're working on your growth mindset. Appreciate that. And Jane, thanks. Just learning how to make programs better. And Jessica, certification information. Jessica, I knew that would catch people's attention, so I'm glad that you caught that too. Jay said, anything nationally being done is something we want to be aware of in Iowa as well. I'm not totally sure what this is, but curious how I can help, and I think a lot of folks are probably in the same boat, Jay. Anybody else have a comment or something else they'd like us to cover today? As always, please ask questions as we go along. That would be easiest in chat, and if you could ask a question. I will unmute at some point, but we often have a lot of background noise, so if you would mute on your end, that would be helpful even when we unmute everyone. Thank you. So today we're going to talk about, we're going to provide an overview of NQMS. So talk about the what of it and why and how. And then program share, we have Sarah Walker on from Big Brothers Big Sisters Mississippi Valley. They actually piloted just the online system, so she could talk a little bit about that portion of it. And then, as always, have time for questions. So the National Quality Mentoring System, or NQMS, is a system for programs to assess themselves against quality standards, and they're based on the 4th edition. It is to assist programs in receiving a quality designation, in receiving training and further technical assistance to support continuous improvements with the program. It is not about a ranking with programs. It's not about scores. It's about quality improvement. So it's building on our knowledge of what programs are doing well and what programs need help with and how we can better help programs. And just to reiterate, that is the reason the Iowa Mentoring Partnership is here. I mean, we do have this certification process, and that we're going to move to this as the form and the process for certification. However, I mean, it's not again, not about ranking and not about scores. Even the certification process, it's all about their minimum standards that we'd like you to meet with elements of effective practice, but everybody has strengths in their program and things they'd like to continue to improve on. So that's really what it's all about. So I think this is really helpful to look at what NQMS is and what it's not. It is, as we said, about continuous improvement. It's on a cycle. It accommodates all the different program models. It's about quality assurance. It is confidential. It's not meant to compare to other programs. It's for your program and for your program to look at their strengths and areas for improvement, and it's focused on program practices. It's not an accreditation process, although we talk about certification at the state. We do not, we're not an accreditation. I mean, we certify that programs have met minimum standards with the elements of effective practice, but quite honestly, you know, we don't have the capacity to really be an accreditation. We're not like saying yes or no, you can or cannot be a mentoring program. It's whether you're willing to, right now, even with certification, whether you're willing to adhere to basic standards and, you know, continue to work on growth in your program. You're not working toward the final correct answer. It's not a one-time evaluation. It would not be intended for programs that are just starting up. That would be, you know, other technical assistance to just get programs going. It's not a way to rank or score programs. It's not a public reporting system for us in comparison to programs. However, this would be a way for you to talk about quality with your stakeholders. And it's not linked to youth outcomes, and that comes from mentors. So that would be a positive thing at some point if we could look at youth outcomes too. I'm going to keep going with a little bit of overview and then pause for questions when you hear a little bit more about the process. So the NQMS is based on the elements of effective practice. That's the overriding standards of practice. And then the online system is made up of 92 self-assessment questions. And I'm glad I have you all muted now, because if you all just gasped about 92 questions, we'll talk a little bit more about it. It's not as daunting. Well, it is daunting when you first look at it, but when you dig into it, it's really not as overwhelming perhaps as it first looks. This is built into the mentoring connector, and the great majority of our programs are already registered on that on Mentors National Database. If you're not, that's a fairly easy process. But the beautiful thing about this online assessment is just that first word, it's online, and this will allow us, the Iowa Mentoring Partnership, to have all of this information collected in one database and one common system, and it won't be as archaic as our PDF fill-in forms for certification. And it's a way to continue to continually online in this database, see where you are in the process, and just better manage for us to manage that data. So after you take the self-assessment, that's just the first part, and after that, there's a review process with the IMP and with your program to look at your areas of strength and areas of improvement, and it provides a real comprehensive picture of where your program feels it currently stands in terms of best practice. And then after the initial assessment, based on your responses, we would work together to look at achievable goals to help improve the quality of your program. Generally, Mentor looks at the goals being for perhaps a one-year period. You have to look at what makes sense with your program and what your goals are, but really wouldn't want to, it will be about long-term planning perhaps, because this would be a 2 or 3 year cycle before we go through the self-assessment again. But we're really looking at goals that are not stretched out forever. If you say you're going to improve, let's just say some program document, or just document something, get it in writing, we're not going to stretch that out for like over the year. You guys would set the goals for what makes sense with your program, but in some time manner that makes sense. So I am going to unmute everyone right now and see what questions people have at this point. Okay, so you're all unmuted on our end. If you have a question, if you want to type in the chat box, you're welcome to, or if you have anything that you want to just ask online, go ahead. Okay, I don't see any questions in the chat box. I don't hear a question, so I'm going to continue at this point. So the benefits of the NQMS are to provide this in-depth assessment of organizational strengths and weaknesses, and to help build the quality of programs nationally through a cohesive system. Also helping us collect national level data, and I would add to the state data as well about program needs and the impact. Build our knowledge, Iowa Mentoring Partnership's knowledge of how we can be responsive to program needs. I will add that the assessment should be helpful to you in your strategic planning or focusing on improvement areas. Although this seems like it's one more thing to do because you have so many demands on your time, honestly, other states and other folks that have piloted this, really, program staff has said it really helps them to focus their time because they actually got some of those things checked off their list that they never have documented before or never gotten to before, and it helps prioritize where they should be focusing their time. It can also be helpful using this information to report to your stakeholders or funders on your goals and your strategic plans. I will say that it's very similar to what the Iowa Mentoring Partnership is going through as a national affiliate of Mentor. We are all doing affiliate assessments, and even though, like some of you need to align with other standards that you may have, and for other stakeholders, or if you belong to a larger affiliate, we need to align and meet goals with ICVS, and Volunteer Iowa, and also with state. We have goals, and we have continuous improvement models and things that we have to report on too. And so this just helps. Like this helps us with that process too. So we have that to report to for some of those other purposes as well. I'm going to continue to tell you. Please put something in the chat box if you have questions about any of this, or feel free to pop in with the question. So we are looking at some programs to get started with the online assessment portion of this, and that will be what the certification process will look like. Will be the online assessment, and then doing a review, and then at that point, programs, that's all they would have to do for the certification. They could, for IMP certification, they could decide if they want to take this further through the continuous improvement model. But if you're looking at, if you're ready for this, you'll have to look at talking with your program and seeing that we have the staff that is appropriate to do this and can be engaged in this. Think about why you're interested in this and what you're going to do with the results, and think about what you're excited about and what worries you. If you have the time in the next couple months to spend 3 to 5 hours doing learning about the process and completing the questionnaire, and that is the part that would take, it will take, I would say, probably 2 to 4 hours maybe to complete the questionnaire, because it includes uploading some documents as well. And then, are you and your staff, program staff, committed to working on your work plan during the next couple of years if you go through the entire assessment process, a quality improvement process, and then which other staff members do you plan to involve? So from these just questions about program readiness and just what you've heard so far, would you share in the chat box, please, if you have something that sounds interesting? I don't know if excited is even a word you would use, like question number 2, or what might worry you or concern you when you're hearing this information that I'm presenting today. So would you please share in the chat box, excited or interested or worried, concerned? So I'm not asking like their concerns. I appreciate your interest, Jane. As I heard, a particular part you're interested in. I'm not asking you to raise your hand and say, "Yay, we're doing this right now. We commit." Anything like that. Lynn says, wondering how much time it will take, and we can talk about that a little bit. Jay is saying the same thing, the time. And Tony, a little worried about the amount of time. Wow, it's a common theme, time. But it's if you don't have just all this spare time sitting around to do one more thing. And Sarah, I think we'll talk about that a little bit. When I talk about NQMS, I want to be really clear. I know sometimes I talk about NQMS just to talk about the initial assessment, and that's what we're talking about, that will take a couple hours, and it really is about, you can have all the questions ahead of time and you'll know the documents that you need to upload, so you'll spend some time if you get that ready. Then actually doing the online part won't take that much time, but I know you will need to collect those documents as well. But truly, the National Quality Mentoring System, the whole system is the process of, then going through the review and working on some goals and some quality improvement for your program. That is entirely up to you, how you want to commit to that. I just want to reiterate again, when we're talking about certification for IMP, we're talking about completing the assessment, and so the programs that are up for recertification this year will be going through that portion of it, that assessment. So any other concerns or pieces of it that is of interest to you? I'm going to unmute everybody right now too, if anybody has any other questions at this point that they'd like to voice. Come on, you guys really aren't this quiet, I know that. And I know this is a lot of information, and the first time a lot of you have seen it. I've been talking about it with our provider board, I've been talking about the regional trainings, I've been talking about when I'm talking with in person with folks, but I know everyone hasn't heard about this before, and there's still a lot of learning to do on this to realize that. Okay, I'm going to mute everyone again and look at a couple more pieces of information for you, except that I went the wrong way. So the steps in the process, as I mentioned earlier, is that your program registers through the mentoring connector if you're not already registered. Then Mentor Affiliate, which is the Iowa Mentoring Partnership, sets up the NQMS access for the program, and then you would go ahead and fill out the self-assessment. After that, then we would look at what your ratings, how you rated your program, and then arrange a time where we could talk about the results. And moving on to step 5, that would be the meeting, talking about the results of your self-assessment. And by results, that sounds like a test, and it's not. It's just your rating of where you feel like you stand in all of these areas. And then at that point, you could decide if you're going to engage in an improvement plan and take this to the next step and engage in quality improvement. And then the last part is talking with us about how we can offer the support, the training resources to you to help develop these goals. It's not like we say, here, you said these goals, go do them. That is an opportunity then for us to help provide that technical assistance and say, for instance, this is just really basic, but you needed to really write down and document what your recruitment plan is. So we could provide some examples with you. We might provide a technical assistance provider, which could be someone from another program that would be willing to talk with you about what they do. And there is money nationally through the National Mentoring Resource Center for programs to assist each other like that and provide that technical assistance. So that's just an opportunity, like I said, if you choose to go forward with setting some goals for a continuous improvement plan, that it's a chance for you to get to those things that perhaps you never really get to, that always are hanging over your head.
Mary, can I say one thing too about the step 6 for coming up with the improvement plan and setting those 3 to 5 goals? That is definitely can be driven by the program and your own interests and areas of improvement. It's not that you complete, those 92 questions and then you're not going to get pigeonholed into focusing on a certain area. Setting those goals is still coming from your program and the areas that that you want to focus on. So the assessment isn't a way to say, you know, like a gotcha, like, oh, you need to have to work on this area, that can still come from internally from the program.
Thanks, Nicole. Jamie, your question leads to our next slide. I will show you the assessment areas that the questions are in, and they're really around the elements. You'll see around the elements of effective practice, and then it's about program design. So these are the areas, and there would be, you know, somewhere between 2 to 5 questions maybe in these different areas. So when you're talking about your data, I guess it's very similar to what you currently answer about certification too. Obviously, it's a little more extensive because honestly, I can't think how many questions we have in certification right now, but there are more questions in this. The other piece of this, you're rating these. You're rating your whether how you practice in each of these areas. So you're just rating how well you implement this. But the other piece of this then, as I mentioned before, is that you are uploading some documents, and these are the documents that you're required to upload. And we would add, this is all the national system. We're going to have to add to our risk management plan since that's required by Iowa code for our programs. So if you wouldn't have some of these documents, again, this is not a comparison, it's not a score. If you didn't have them, you would upload a blank document, and that would be something we could talk about if that's something that your program feels as part of their goals that they'd like to work on, having one of those, or working on completing that. So when you're seeing that, what the questions are, and thinking, does this duplicate other things, does that clarify that enough? Does it feel like you're doing the same thing over that you do elsewhere? Help me out. I'm going to unmute you. Please be honest. I want your feedback of what we're presenting. Well, hearing the silence, I will take that to mean you think this is just so awesome and you're just ready to answer 90 questions and put all those documents. Okay.
Mary, this is Sarah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, who is it?
Sarah Walker.
Oh, thanks, Sarah.
So something I guess I would just clarify, in terms of the couple questions about data, really the survey itself is not about the number of children served. It's not about math retention. It's not about outcomes that you're seeing in your program. It's really more about what processes and procedures you are.
Just a minute, Sarah. Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to mute everyone. Someone has terrible background noise. It's really hard to hear you. I'm going to mute everybody else.
Okay, I'll wait.
You'd hang on just a second. Okay, Sarah, we can hear you better now. Thank you.
All right, so I guess I would say in terms of whether or not it's duplicating data, the survey itself is not so much about the metrics that you actually are seeing. It's not about the number of children that you have served. It's not about the number of matches you have, match retention. It's really more about the processes that you have in place within your agency to show that you are meeting the recommendations of elements of effective practice. So it's really more about the processes in place, not about what you're actually seeing and performing in your program. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. They really are, except, I mean, I know we asked at the very beginning of our certification questions, but it is more like that, like, does your program have an established criteria for accepting and disqualifying potential members? You know, then you rank that. Does your program conduct at least 2 reference checks? And then you rank that, like where you think you fall in implementing those elements. And then same thing about program design. Does your program have a strategic plan or a specific guiding document? And at the end, I'm going to provide the link to a toolkit for programs looking at, you know, whether they're ready to engage in this. And at the end of that toolkit is all of the questions and then the same list of the documents to upload.
Excellent.
Thanks for helping clarify. Any other questions or comments at this point? So the last part of this is that nationally then Mentor is going to provide this designation and badging for programs that have completed the NQMS process. I was just on a call yesterday, and there's still, really, this is still kind of in development, I think, about what this might look like, because it really is about a commitment to continuous improvement. It's not based on a score, like you have to get X. I said again, this is not a score thing. So it's not like you have to get certain ranking or anything to get this. But they were talking about perhaps that there would be there's some level that you engaged, that you maybe took the self-assessment, and then that next level that you're working towards your continuous improvement goal. So it might say a couple different things there. Instead of member, it might, again, they're still working on the language, but there might be like 2 different designations. And I might have just used the word level, but that's not what, it's not about a score, it's just about where you are in the process, really, and don't want to mislead people with what this badge says. So I should just summarize that there will be some kind of a designation to show that you have adhered to this next level of continuous improvement. I just used the word level again. Engaged in another way of quality improvement, and there will be that designation. And again, I think that's really something positive to use with your stakeholders and to show, like, this is really, you know, besides adhering to the elements of effective practice, this would be part of the IMP certification, but also that we're really engaging in this process to really continually look at how our program can be the best mentoring program it can be. So I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah again, because she did participate in the online pilot of the system, and so really they were just testing out if the system worked correctly and what the questions looked like, and they did not upload the documents, so that didn't go that far in the process, but she did have that experience and looked at a little bit and has thought about this a little bit, albeit you know, 6 months ago, I think, Sarah. So testing your memory. But I did want one of your peers to actually share their experience, at least using the online system. So thanks, Sarah.
Yep, no problem. So yeah, when you initially hear 92 questions, it certainly feels overwhelming, but things that I found very helpful before I even accessed it online was looking at an overview of the questions that were asked. Most of them, I had a pretty good idea of what the responses were, but I would really encourage programs to take a look at what the questions are, and if you don't know what the answer is, find it out before you log in. That's going to save you a lot of time instead of starting it, stopping it, finding out the answer. Just go through the questions, make sure that you know who the person is that you need to find out the information from, so that you have it. Most of it is going to be direct mentoring program implementation focused. So how do you train your volunteers, and what's the content of that training, the screening process. You know, most of us in that direct program role are going to have an idea of what those are, but there are some other questions that are more focused on strategic planning, financial structure of the organization. So if you aren't really sure what the responses are to those, find them out ahead of time so that you know how to respond. A few other things that I found to be helpful is really just looking at it as reinforcement and a reminder of what the elements do say, and how that compares to what you're actually doing in your program. Again, I do feel most of our programs that are in IMP and associated with it we are implementing the elements pretty consistently, but it's a great reminder that these are the components that we need to have, and it gives us just another layer of making sure that we are implementing our program to a national standard. So it wasn't, it took me about 45 minutes to an hour to actually complete the online version. But like Mary said, I was not required to upload any of the supporting documents. So had I needed to do that, I know it would have added some time. But again, going through it ahead of time and making sure that you know what documents you're going to need so you have them available will certainly speed that along. Somebody had Jamie said it's a bit duplicative. You know, you have the documents. Almost all of us are going to have the documents. It's just a matter of having them ready so that you can upload them when you need to. I was not able to participate. I mean, really, as the pilot, we didn't do the quality component afterward. It was really just checking to see how that online version worked, the kinds of questions we were asked, and all of that. So I'm very anxious to hear from some programs as we get into this, and you know, setting those goals and having that ongoing support from National Mentor, and how that's all going to really just improve the quality of the programs overall. So that's my comments. Certainly open to any questions if people have them, or Mary, whatever else you want to add.
Hey, Mary. I love the idea that Iowa is going to be having some nationally ranked mentoring programs across the state. I think that's exciting. It's great.
I agree. I don't know where Mary went.
Yeah, she's here. She's here. Yeah, and Lynn, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm trying to use language to, like, we're not ranked, but yes, right. So we're saying that we're adhering to standards to these standards, and we're working on continuous improvement. Yes, agreed. And to be clear, what this process will look like is we're going to do some outreach to programs. It's not like we just, okay, we talked about a webinar, go, everybody get on. We're going to truly pilot the entire process, hopefully with a couple programs towards before the end of this calendar year. We would like about 10 programs to at least do the online assessment. We have some money from Mentor right now to do that work, and we have, that's why Nicole is able to work with us a little bit too here from Volunteer Iowa staff, and we're doing some outreach with programs and really just to talk through that with you. So I will be reaching out with programs to see if we can get engaged and talk some more. And I don't expect that, you know, I call and you just say, yes, we're ready to go. Yeah, we'll talk through it and we'll help you through the entire process, from answering any questions about the online assessment. But you know, as we go along, it's all collaborative. But obviously there will be a lot more questions before your program would commit to this. But do know that we are looking for some folks to pilot it. And maybe it's good if you're one of the first, and we're all, you know, figuring out the process together, right? So any other questions or comments at this point? And although I try to make it comfortable and realize, you know, that I hope you guys know you could all comment on this call. I know some people aren't always entirely comfortable, or they have a question specific to their program. So please feel free to give a call or shoot an email, and we can follow up with the phone call. And as I said, I'll be doing some further outreach and talking with programs too about this. And we'll continue to talk about this and help everyone through the process. A couple of the resources I mentioned earlier is the NQMS toolkit for programs, and that talks about the entire process, but it also does have the questions and the document upload requirements too. So I will send the slides out after this, and know that that link is in there. And then of course I had to, you know, sell you a little bit more on this. There's a testimonial from one of our partners in Minnesota from one of their programs. And I really like it. She had just wrote a blog post, and it was on National Mentoring Resource Center and elsewhere it's been posted. But I think you would enjoy that too, because she talks about it from you know, program staff perspective, and she's pretty real about it, and it's a pretty easy read too. So I encourage you to take a look at that too. So happy to answer any more questions online here or offline after the call. I am recording this, and so if that's helpful to listen to it again, or if you just want to look at the slides too for more information. Just a reminder that the Nonprofit Summit is October 24th and 25th. We're past the deadline to receive the comped registration fee for mentoring programs, but I know we have a good attendance, and really looking forward to seeing folks there. We can talk about this more, or other issues we'd like to talk about at the conference. And otherwise, we'll look for you at the November Peer Share call on Thursday, November 9th. And always, we're here, just a phone call, email away. Happy always to help and support your great programs in any way we can. So thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks, Sarah, for sharing. Thanks for your questions and chat. And with that, we'll end the call unless we hear anything else. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you.